Hello everyone and welcome to another podcast. If you are a Patreon member of the channel, then you can download an audio version of this podcast at patreon.com. My guest for this podcast is a young and rising film critic Rahul Desai, who writes for Film Companion and The Hindu. With his unique voice and cutthroat style of film criticism, Rahul is rapidly edging closer to become one of the best in the business. I personally love reading his reviews. If you haven't read any of his reviews, then I highly recommend you to do it. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rahul Desai.
Hi.
How are you?
Good to be here.
How was Total Dhamaal?
I thought we weren't going to talk about that. Total Dhamaal, I'm still recovering from that.
Really?
Yeah.
When I saw the trailer, I was like, oh shit, I'm watching this film.
I didn't even see the trailer. So I went in blind. And a lot of people were talking about animals in the film. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm in for till like I was because if I watched the trailer, I would have just gone in like the most cynical person ever. On a Friday morning, that too, they didn't have like a preview screening. So I was like, I guess it's just better to bite the bullet there.
Okay. I saw the trailer and I thought, oh my god, Rohit Shetty just after Simba already came up with another movie.
Oh, that's what a lot of people said. Even during the film, and it's surprising, the hall was full and people were enjoying themselves. A lot of people treated it as a Rohit Shetty film. Midway through, even I thought, this is no different. And they even had a reference to him, like a couple of, because a lot of cars were flying.
And most of the cast is the same cast.
Yes. And most of the cast, I think they all just, it's the same set most of the time. I think they just go from one studio to another.
Must be hard to review these movies.
You get used to it after a while. Actually, it's good for balance, because there's Gully Boy one week and you're like, maybe things are too good to be true. You need to come back down to earth. And then next week you come like crashing down back. So, I don't mind it. It's part of the job. You have to, you get perspective though.
But yes, it is part of the job. But how did you become a critic? Like, was it like, what is so appealing about being a critic?
I will not say there's a lot appealing to be a Hindi film critic at this point of time, because you don't really get. I may sound a little snobbish about this, but you don't really get an opportunity to really exercise your skills or your craft throughout the year with Hindi films, at least. Because at least I don't know how it is down south, but or any other region of this country for that matter, but. Hindi films, it's a little difficult. I didn't even plan to become a critic. I'm accidentally a critic because I wanted to be a writer of any sort. Okay. And around 2012 or 13, I used to just write a lot of short stories on my blog when I was kind of drifting along. I didn't know what to do at that point of time. I was between stuff. I was between like either wanting to become a screenwriter or maybe like get into corporate films, a lot of stuff basically. And I didn't know what I wanted to do at that point of time, and I used to practice a lot on my blog. And every second day I used to just write, like late into the night I just used to practice write short stories, write spec scripts for myself. I was never going to show it to anyone, just to because I enjoyed writing. I still enjoy writing. And I won't even say that I'm a film critic in that sense. I'm more of a writer because I decided very early, at least after college, that this is something I think I can maybe express myself with. And if I can make a career out of it, it'll be great. So film criticism just seemed to happen. In 2012 or 13, one of my friends was running a website called upperstall.com and they just needed someone to fill in. And I just started writing about Hindi films. I was like, man, this isn't so difficult, And of course I was right because, it wasn't at that point of time. But what I also didn't know is that, I was just like you start writing and then you start critiquing films were two very different ball games altogether. And then a couple of years of doing that, and not even regularly. I just used to do it because, I used to enjoy watching movies for free. And I used to go to press shows and I was like, this isn't so bad. It's a good stress buster. But in 2014, when I landed the Mumbai Mirror gig, because a friend of mine left to make films. And then he recommended me. And that was the turning point because I was like, if I'm going to write for a national daily, I really need to up my game and I really need to watch more films. I really need to concentrate on my writing and on critiquing in general. So I started from 2014, once I was in print, I started taking it very seriously. And then I think it happened organically. After that, I can't think of any other type of writing I'd want to do, at least to express myself. I can do this every week. With other things, it takes time. If you're writing a book, if you're writing even a long form essay, or like if you're reporting, if I was a normal journalist, I'm not even a journalist, so I'm just like a writer, and it takes time. So I wanted to just keep writing. I'm prolific that way, and I like writing at least 4 days a week or 5 days a week, and I need at least 2 or 3 pieces to come out every week to at least know that I can still improve. I can still have a voice. I can still maybe discover little things in writing, because the validation you get when you finish a piece is just like nothing else I've experienced. And so it just happened. I won't say I always aspired to be a film critic. I always used to read a couple of them from the West, like Ebert and Cale, but I never thought that I always used to think I would never be objective enough to become a critic, because I love film so much. And in college I used to just trip over like 2-3 films a day. That's all I used to do in town in Xavier's, and I used to go after college, watch 2-3 films in Sterling and come back. I always used to maintain that I can't become a critic, but it's as it turned out, life had other plans.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the blog still active?
The blog is not active. I actually turned it into like a collective for my reviews till 2016. Then I stopped posting that also, because I started writing for multiple publications.
Alright.
So I would have loved to keep putting my stuff on there, just so that, if someone asks me, where is your work, I can just send them one link. It's very smart to do that, actually. I'd recommend everyone does that. But I stopped doing that after 2000. So I have like 2.5 years of backlog, and now it's too late to do it. But all the fiction that I used to write was before 2014. I wrote like novellas and children's books and all on it also.
So don't you feel like giving it to some producer and produce some good material?
Not really. I don't think it's a good time to cross over to the other side, given the kind of reviews I put out. The producers will not be very friendly right now.
Some indie producers, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I did just do that writing for myself. I'm very selfish that way.
So I come across a lot of pieces on film criticism. I value film criticism a lot. So every time I would not like to call it fight, but any sort of argument over a film, the argument tends to end from the other side saying, oh, it's an opinion piece. It doesn't matter much. So what is an opinion piece? What's the critical piece?
That's a good question. See, honestly, again, I'm not going to fake it, because I don't know these terms myself. Till 2 years ago, till I was writing 4 publications every week, till 3 years ago, I did not know that people call this an op-ed, or people call this a critical dissection. Or, for example, if you, even now when I write reviews every week, I don't know if they're opinion pieces or if they are critiques of a particular, if they're technical critiques or like a cultural critique or whatever it is, because I mix all of it up. I don't have a term for what I do. The writing comes organically, and I just write what I feel maybe is sort of, maybe just might put a film across in the best way possible on a particular Friday, so that people can maybe read it after they watch the film. That's how I at least write my review. So when people say opinion pieces, I think every review is an opinion piece. Every opinion piece can be a review, because even when I write columns for The Hindu, which I do like every 2 weeks, I didn't know it was called an opinion piece for the longest time. Wow. They were like, like he writes opinions for someone was saying it, and I heard it. I was like, no, but I thought I was writing essays. I thought because even part of the opinion piece, even if I'm writing a personal essay, you will find critique of films in that. You will find me going into a scene, into the framing of a scene, because it meant a particular. So I don't know if there's a difference, honestly. Like for me personally, when someone has a debate with me about like a particular film, or how they feel about a particular film, or how a particular film was made, I immediately engage, because I'm not going to say it's your opinion and let's agree to disagree most of the time. I can't do that, because because it comes from a personal space most of the time, the film as well as you're writing about the film, and as well as the person who's watched it and feels strongly about the film. So I mean, that's an easy way to get out of it. Obviously even critics are like sort of opinion makers. It's a personal opinion in the end. Not really. If it's a personal opinion, then everyone can do this. Everyone can who can write a little can just put it across. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of discussion saying, "Oh, I don't agree with this critic." ठीक है चलेगा, पर personal opinion है ना. In the end, critics do that only. But we are professionals for a reason. It's because we have a particular voice. It's because we may speak to say 2 out of 10 people even when we write about a film. So I don't believe there is a difference between both of them. At least if you really want to write about be it sport, be it film, because these terms only come from seasoned journalists, from seasoned journalism in general. Because I've never worked in an office. I have never been to a newsroom. So I write most of my stuff from home, sitting in my room, and so I don't even know the technical terms. Like till 2 years ago, I didn't know what a copy editor was. And like I see a lot of friends of mine who are also in journalism, and they were like, we are doing, we wrote this like more of reportage, and we wrote this as, I mean, I can't write opinion pieces and all. I was like, I don't know if it makes sense to me, because everyone is writing reportage. Also your opinion seeps into most of your reportage because you plan it a certain way. It's the same vice versa too.
What I feel is like when somebody says it's an opinion piece, I would say there's no academic background to that particular opinion, right? No. So then I can just refute it just another argument.
Correct. Unless you're an academic doing a PhD or something and you have presented a proper dissection of a film or a story or literature, I don't think you can just dismiss it as say personal opinion. This is what I feel.
Exactly. Exactly. So for example, if Bharadwaj Rangan says something about a film, and compared to some engineering college student, 22-year-old says something about the same film, I would rather listen to Bharadwaj Rangan. Yeah. There's an academic background regarding films that from which that opinion is coming from. So even if what quote unquote opinion, there is far more educational background behind that informed opinion.
Yeah. And informed is the main word here.
Exactly.
Right? And it comes from experience. It comes from doing it for a while. It comes from being able to, wanting to sort of get into a film more than an average person, wanting to get into something you might, an average person on the road might just find flimsy and dismiss in 2 minutes. We will spend 2 days on. Exactly. That is probably the difference. So I will not want anyone to say, yaar, ye to personal opinion hai. First of all, it's hardly an opinion, my reviews. Most of people who take reviewing seriously and critics who write from their heart and from their mind most of the time, I don't think they want to be known as opinion makers. Really.
Absolutely not.
I don't think so. Yeah. So I feel that it's an easy way out. Opinion hi hai to 3 start talking about stars only then. Then
and then why even spend time writing 5 different paragraphs?
Then why do we spend like 9 hours on one paragraph sometimes? What are we doing? We are not like putting across our personal stories here and telling you that, whether you like it or not, this is my opinion. No, I want you to engage. Exactly. I want anyone to engage, and I want to understand why I didn't like a film and say someone else liked a film. And that happens so many times.
But we are not talking about just liking and disliking. Yeah. Right? We are talking about the quality of particular work.
Yeah, totally. And and if you invest so much into the quality of a particular film, and if you take, if it's your job basically, job is still like a constructed term. I wouldn't call it that. But if this is what we do, then we don't expect just to be, you don't see people in office giving a presentation, ye uska opinion hai types. Aisa nahi hone wala. So this is the same thing for us also.
The silence is because of the coffee sipping.
Yeah.
So what's the larger goal? Like now you said you accidentally became a film critic, but what's the larger goal now that you are a film critic?
I want to keep writing in this form as much as possible, keep maybe raising the game at some point, because I'm still only 5 years into my career. I'm still young at this. I'm still, there's so much to learn, so much to watch, so much to do. I have not watched like so much, and every year I become a different writer. It's exciting, right? It changes every year. There's so much chaos in the writing, in the way you view films, in the way you digest films every year, depending on what phase of life you're going through. There's so much to explore as a writer that it's great if you get recognized on the way. It's nice. And if people read you, and if people understand you, or people choose to read you. But I just want to I just want to keep doing this and lend a certain semblance of integrity to the way people review films in this country, because honestly, it's been on autopilot for a while.
I don't think it was autopilot. There was nothing. There was no vehicle at all.
That's my polite way of putting it. Okay, and we are actually in a good phase right now. Because there are people trying to come up, trying to have their voice heard. There are people who are not going by the rules. And there are people who are a little more independent in their thinking than earlier before. Because, you have to understand that film reviews are not treated as a very primary section of a newspaper or a publication. Unless it's a film publication, which I am lucky to be working for. But if it's in a normal publication, it's just for numbers. You know that people are going to read it every Friday, whether you write shit or whether you write something nuanced. It doesn't matter. They don't care as long as it's under 500 words. So that has to change at some point.
True.
And that will only change if we keep coming up, if we keep making a difference. And if the younger generation like myself or the generation under myself are in a position to do that, we can't just keep cribbing about what the standard is. We have to do something about it. We have to put ourselves out there in our reviews every week. We have to challenge thinking. We have to challenge the norms, the way things, and that's very easy to do in this country, to challenge, because everyone is in a set way of sort of operating. And so I can't even tell you where I'll be 5 years from now, but if I am as long as I'm doing this, I will do this for a long time. I just want to raise the standard, at least for myself, if not for anyone, because then everything else will take care of itself. And evolving is a big part of what we all do, I think. And I think if we all start talking a little more about films like this, and we start engaging and getting critique into the mainstream view in general, and keep putting ourselves out there, exposing ourselves a little more, not just sitting on Twitter and saying ye mera piece hai. You talk about it like this. You talk about with pride, you talk about what you do with pride. You market yourself in a way if you have to, because nothing just happens. You have to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the profession has to go on an upswing now, because it could not go lower than it was for a long time. There are only still a handful of names.
True. True. Despite me, and I'm not being elitist here, but despite me loving film criticism, has been following film criticism almost. My first exposure to good cinema was through film criticism. Still, I follow 3 to 4 Hindi film critics.
Right. So also, see, you can't even blame. See, it's a very difficult. The dynamic is very tricky in Hindi films, at least. I'll tell you, the films don't afford you the opportunity to be a thinker. And when they do offer you the opportunity, you're but till now we were surviving, we'll keep doing this only. We'll be short and sweet. We are just doing it as a job, na? Matlab space hi to bharna in the end. But with this onset of digital publications, with now writers are starting to be noticed a little more.
True.
And that is the good thing. That's why I will never begrudge the digital world taking over, say, the print world. Because print hasn't made it easy for themselves by treating critics the way they do, or by treating reviews or entertainment section the way they do. They are responsible for where we are right now. And it's the digital publications that are giving us the opportunity to treat reviewing as, say, as important a craft as, say, reporting, civil reporting, or any kind of reporting journalism for that matter. And it should be. Yeah. It is a very complex craft, and people cannot just turn to reviews for stars all the time. We have to take it to a level where people are turning to your review on a Sunday morning because they need another, because they like reading on Sundays, because they need a voice to follow, because they need to talk to someone about a film, and if they then if they're reading a report simultaneously about, say, a particular aspect in Mumbai or Delhi or something, and they at the same time read a review, I mean, your job is half done there.
Absolutely.
So,
but then I always have this thing like regarding film critics, because it's different in US, it's different in India. In US, you get at least around a week to write a review, right?
Yeah.
The press screenings are far.
I mean, they have embargoes. They have. Of course, here nobody.
Like I remember one of my favorite film critics, Mark Kermode, before he wrote a review of Phantom Thread, he had watched the film 4 times before writing the review.
Oh, that freedom would be lovely.
Exactly. We never get.
No, we can't. I mean, Thursday night also we are very fortunate sometimes to be watching, and Thursday nights we'll be up till 6 a.m. and and you're trying to basically talk for a film and present a film after one viewing within a night, and then be able to look back on your review, say 1 year later, and saying this is exactly how I feel. That never happens.
No, exactly.
It's not supposed to happen also.
Absolutely. So do you grudge that fact that I have to write a review within like now next 6 hours?
I mean, you make peace with it. There is no other way. Things are not going to change in the near future. And you try to make the best of your situation. Within that situation, if you push yourself, it is still possible. If you really care for what you do, it is possible. Like, we will sit through the night and go over a line 10 times because we still have 6 hours. It's better than watching it on a Friday morning, coming back and having to write it in 2 hours. Things could be worse. That is how you look at it. And I mean, if it's a Thursday night, I'm all prepared for an all-nighter. It's all good because my mind is ready. You get one chance at writing about a good film, one chance in 3 months.
True.
And you better make the most of it. It's like, you are given a chance and suddenly you treat it as you're given a chance. One player gets injured in the team and you have one chance to prove yourself. That's how you do it. In Hindi films, that is the case. And you can't sit back and say, "Yaar, it's my off day. I can't, my mind is not working. I'm never going to get this out." That mentality doesn't work.
What about when there are multiple films to review in a single week?
Which is all the time.
In Hindi cinema, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, then you prioritize, right? Like you give more time to the better film. You probably find a way to write about lesser films in a way that doesn't take too much out of yourself, because you have to pace yourself most of the time. You can't. Sometimes we're lucky enough to be shown, say, the indie films, the slightly smaller films on a Tuesday. Then we do have 2-3 days, and then you have no excuse to put out a substandard review.
True.
You better not have an excuse. So most of our good writing will come from good films, especially the ones which are shown slightly earlier. Of course, the mainstream films that we all like, say even a Gully Boy or a Razi or something like that, they are all shown on Thursday night. So you have one night. I mean, everyone is at an equal footing there. Unless a lot of critics are also shown it 2 days earlier, the big ones, the print critics, because they want PR. The PR mafia, which is what I call them, use critics as sort of PR tools most of the time, which I hate. And I don't want to be on good terms with PR. I'm not here to make friends.
Absolutely.
So if they don't want to call me on a Tuesday or Wednesday, fine. I mean, I'm going to watch it. You can't escape that.
So from the insider, I can tell you, तुम्हारा बहुत खौफ है.
खौफ होना चाहिए. And it means like, it also doesn't say much about the entire machinery, right? Like the way things work. They should just be happy that, someone is doing their job. I mean, sure, it's going to affect their film in a way, in a small way.
Do you really think like a particular critic's piece is going to affect the business of a film?
It won't affect the business of a film, but it will affect a lot of other internal factors about how the film is received in the film circles, maybe, or in the production circles, or in, whatever, even in the literary circles for that matter. And that affects, say, personally the filmmakers or the producers, or they hold grudges, ego comes into play. It's not going to affect the box office, because then no business, Rohit Shetty films would never do well.
Exactly.
Nothing would change. I mean, it does affect the smaller films slightly. I'd say exposure wise, if not business wise. Like a lot of people didn't even know Sony had released on Netflix last month. And if critics hadn't done their job, people wouldn't have known.
Absolutely.
So I think that way it might just help. At least we tell ourselves that at least the smaller films might just maybe profit from it or get some advantage. And I'm not saying that we need to be kind to smaller films. If they are bad films, they're bad films. We are not here to do social service.
Absolutely.
But the ones that deserve some exposure, sure. And even if there's one in 4 or 5 months, we are happy. The big films, it's not going to make any difference, honestly. And of course, that's why PR people are sort of wary of particular critics, because they know and they know that if they show the film early, and I don't understand, because even if they show the film early or they show it on a Thursday, the review is still going to come out at the same time. It's just that it's a business, right? Yeah. They want to carry blurbs, they want to carry quotes, they want to tell filmmakers that that these particular critics liked a film. And honestly, how many of them are critics? They are trade analysts most of the time.
Yeah.
So I don't even call them reviewers or whatever it is. And I'm not here to afford respect just because they're older than me or anything. No, I'm sorry. I put way more into my job than they do. Absolutely. And I am not here to go and call them sir or ma'am or whatever it is. If they are not doing their job well, then they've let us down, the next generation. So we have no one to look up to.
And they have actually already let us down.
They have for a long time. Yeah. And we have no one to look up to. At least when I talk to people my age or the ones who are in my position right now, which are 2 or 3, we keep discussing that we really have no one to follow or to, which is also good and bad, because we then set our own standards, make our own rules. But that's a sad state. We've been making films for God knows how many years, and you don't have
more than 100 years now.
Yeah, and you don't have
we don't have 10 good film critics.
10 good film critics in those 100 years. Are you what went wrong?
I have this theory, from 65 till 80, something happened in film industry. We sort of just changed the route of a philosophy of cinema. From post-guide, it just went into some other ethereal zone, what we call Bollywood now, quote-unquote Bollywood. The roots were there.
Okay.
And the 80s cinema, that independent movement which carried forward from the US,
right,
that tried to revamp the 60s and the 50s of Hindi cinema, but because of no box office, failed miserably.
And it would have helped if there was interesting critique at the same time, right?
Absolutely.
Because honestly, even
I completely, that's what I say, I'm really sorry to cut you off. Yeah. But that absolutely right, because in the 70s, most of the good films that were imprinted in the consciousness of audience was because a large help of film critics.
Yes.
I've said it in one of my videos also, Scorsese wouldn't have got the recognition had Pauline Kael and Roger Ebert wouldn't
not
have written about
him as their boy.
Exactly.
That's and those stories are rare here, right? They
almost none.
I mean, I can't even recall one. It's not like I'm interested in the history of how film critics here, care for filmmakers, but no,
they care for filmmakers for a whole other reason.
Yeah. Let's not get into that. This will turn into something else then. But yeah, I mean, no, it's not. And who can blame them? It was only print for the longest time, and
But it was print in the Hollywood also.
It was print in Hollywood.
Print in
the
Europe
culture
also.
is different there. The culture of digesting cinema, of cinema as a culture, there is different. And whenever you go there, you realize that, it's a huge deal. I mean, look at the festivals there compared to here. Look at a lot of things are so different there. It's not only a business.
True.
It's just not. And that sort of waters down to the writing about films, to the and their people are really important. I don't follow a lot of them there right now, the current crop of critics who are supposedly very good, but especially with the digital explosion. But I mean, you should just they hold a lot of importance and all for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, not because they have an agenda, or they really engage, they critique, and some of the pieces you read and it's just on another level.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just little. I most of the critique that Richard Brody had written about the films that I have liked has been negative, but I still love reading.
But I still love reading him. I mean, I always turn, because he's going to be contrarian sometimes, but there is so much flair and logic somehow, some perverse logic to the way he spins things, that you just want to read it. It's just because he's a writer, not because he just not because he's pulling down a film.
True.
You know.
True. And there's vast experience of multiple disciplines that is coming into
Totally.
while
So
watching
much.
one
His own life is like years lived. It's just not. You don't learn to become a critic. Your life is channeled in such a way that it has to come out in writing. And as it turns out, it's about films. It could be anything.
You're using films as a vessel.
It's just a vessel. You know, I mean, someone asked me, I'm like, but I'm more passionate about sports. Why aren't you a sports writer? I was like, that was my second choice at that point of time. So the only difference is that would have required me to go into office and become a reporter first, which I wasn't ready to do. So that's why this path.
Yeah. So you spoke about festivals being different there. You're back from Sundance Film Festival. How was it?
Oh, it was first of all like a surprising experience because I've never covered big festivals. I've always been, I mean, we only have Mami here and most of us treat it very religiously. And ever since I have been a critic, I've really not covered international festivals. So this was a pleasant surprise because, you know, I had applied because they had just started a critics inclusion program, Sundance, especially after all that discourse that happened a couple of years ago or last year. A lot of actresses talked about how there should be equal representation of critics in gender-wise, caste-wise, race-wise, in every way. So that has actually shaken up the American system. And a lot of sponsors have come in. This was actually the Roger Ebert Foundation was behind this thing primarily. And which was poetry for me because, you know, he was the one guy who used to read a lot. And Chaz Ebert, who's his wife, was behind getting the sponsors and Rotten Tomatoes, a bunch of them basically. And so they started a program where 50 critics from around the world would be chosen from underrepresented countries, which means Asia, Africa, UK, anything not America. And even America, but the freelancers, the ones who write for blogs and the ones who write for their own websites. So they were chosen and they were given a stipend which was enough to say cover 7 or 8 days of the festival, which was great. And so that's how I went to Sundance. And, you know, not many Indian critics have gone there because it is a very expensive festival.
And very cold.
That is another story altogether. I've always been a big fan of winters, but I reconsidered my decision this time because, but I mean, I was ready physically. Literally, it was like training for an army exercise at some point. I was like, because 2 weeks before I started drinking more water because the altitude was supposed to. But when I went there, I was like, what? The American critics are complaining about altitude. They are complaining about jet lag. And I was like, boss, I've come 28 hours in 3 flights here. And I am dehydrated and I am still watching 3 films a day. What are you complaining about altitude? There's no sickness here. You have to get through the week. But it was an amazing experience and it was so hectic. It was so fulfilling because you know, it's called the Discovery Festival for a reason. A lot of first filmmakers, second filmmakers are presenting their films. So, you know, these are festivals where you don't have a list before you go. You don't know what will come. You have no idea. It's a first festival where the names actually come out. You know, for the rest of the year. You'll be like, oh shit, this filmmaker is going to make it big. Whiplash. So many films, you know, like tons of them, like Call Me By Your Name.
Reservoir
Dogs, yeah. I mean, Tarantino, it's just, the list is endless. That's where they get discovered. So it's like the holy grail for American festivals also. It's amazing how much respect they accord to Sundance on that context alone.
Are most of the films that are submitted American?
Most of them are. There is a there's a world cinema section also, which is very prestigious, but they concentrate on American independent cinema mostly. Especially.
And it's exclusively independent, or are there now more?
I mean, independent is a very ambiguous term, right?
Because the whole ethos of starting that festival was non-studio films.
Again, like when you say there are always studio heads there scouting for films. There's Netflix and Amazon picking up films left, right and center, and Apple, and the list is endless. But the films, I'd say more in spirit than anything, are independent. The films have to be, basically it's like a market there. Then people pick it up from there. Then your course is charted there. The film's destiny is charted at Sundance itself. If you don't get the hype in Sundance, then it's a problem.
Because most of the festivals don't take second screening, third screening.
No, they don't. So Sundance is your world premiere most of the time.
Exactly.
Right. And it's probably your sophomore film or your first film or something. in some cases, people are returning with their third or fourth film because they are Sundance alum, and they are welcomed every time. But Sundance, you also won't see a lot of Sundance films picked up in Berlin or in Cannes or in Toronto, because Sundance has a particular vibe, a mood, a particular programming sense, which I don't think a lot of American festivals have. I'd say it's the equivalent of say like a documentary film festival, but like in every sense, like you are trying to expose all kinds of filmmakers there to all kind, and it's not just because your film is chosen there means it's a great film. It means Sundance at that particular point in time needs that film.
There's that film, absolutely. You just talked upon the programming being different. Just explain that a little. How was this particular festival that you attended was programmed?
This year, so I don't know how exactly they go about the programming, obviously, but I knew there was a new programming head this year, which is why there was a lot of inclusivity. The spirit had changed totally. A lot of people came together. That's why this program was also started. So it was sort of a transitional year in that sense. The tide was turning this year. You could feel it when you were there also, because you're seeing critics and you're seeing writers, you're seeing filmmakers from all over the world suddenly, not just America. And you're being welcomed in and you're just being told to do your job. Nobody's going to be on your head there. And the programming itself, I thought, was very interesting, because I've never been to a festival that doesn't have big names to start with. I mean, that there are actors in certain films or there are good directors to look out for, but you don't know what film's going to you can't make a preview list, say 10 films to look at. Like IndieWire does that all the time, but I'm sure IndieWire also they don't know. They go through, they have probably a whole team dedicated to every title that is going to play there. And they do a lot of research before that, but there is no way to find out. And you go there and the whole point is to be pleasantly surprised by every film you see, which is great, because most of the films are not even very... you're not going to see them anywhere else.
True.
Most of the time, maybe on a streaming platform if you're lucky nowadays. And that the films there are going to sort of be a Sundance film all their life. They are not going to have a Cannes thing on their... Never. They are not going to do it. And that's nice. That's nice because there's a particular... entire generation or a voice represented by one particular festival. And that too, in this day and age, it's very difficult to sustain. And the way Sundance have been going about it, at least from what I saw, is I think they are evolving. At least they are taking initiative in evolving along with, because now other festivals are taking note also, like SXSW, which happens in March, are also starting an inclusion program. So is Toronto this year. So I think, the future is good, but only for American film festivals as of now. Because I know for a fact that European film festivals and all are they are chaotic and they are messy, and there's hierarchy, there is politics, there's a lot of stuff. And I wouldn't want to cover the bigger festivals. I'm very happy doing this. If I just keep getting into these programs, it'll be great. Because no publication can afford those festivals.
Absolutely. Cannes has almost become a party place now.
Oh yeah. Also, you see half of Bombay there. So, to catch up with people, you'd go to Cannes.
So how many times were you pleasantly surprised in this festival?
So I saw around 21 films. See, the thing is, being inexperienced at festivals before this, and being only a regular visitor of Mami most of the time, I was just concentrating on how many films to watch. I made a schedule before going. I was just winging it, basically saying these are maybe the films that in these slots that I might watch, physically possible to watch. So I will watch these films, but what I realized when I went there is that Sundance is about way more than the film screenings.
Okay.
And I am terrible at networking. I am and here you have this poor Indian critic who has no idea what is going on the weather. He just wants to get out of the snow most of the time. And there are the main street keeps having parties and events and the celebrities just randomly walking down the street. Of course, I didn't see them because I wasn't in that part most of the time. I was concentrating on covering the films. But it's like a giant carnival apparently. And I did not see that side of it. That's why I want to go again at some point and see that side of it. You can't do everything, you know. So either you go as a journalist who's interviewing celebrities. So I noticed the American publications, they send 2 or 3 critics. 1 or 2 of them will interview the celebrities, interview the filmmakers. The others will review the films. You can't do both, because if you go chasing interviews there, half your day will go there and you're going to miss screenings, because the accessibility is a problem there. Okay. You know, there are great like routes, bus routes and this and that, but you can't depend on that. Yeah. It's not walking distance, everything. And it's very expensive, so you have to make the most of it. So you have to choose your battles very early on. And I chose reviewing, which means I didn't see a lot of celebrities, which means I didn't see Damien Chazelle, who was actually the head of like the selection committee and all that. So I was like, it's fine. Maybe next time I might just prioritize. But I mean, there was Ritesh Batra's Photograph playing there. You know, there was Gurinder Chadda's new film playing there. Of course, when you are an Indian and Indian filmmakers are playing there, which is very rare, there is always the temptation to interview them, to hunt them down and saying bye, you know, like you have to give it to an Indian publication. But you also have to understand that it's not possible. Everyone is international there. It doesn't matter. Ritesh Batra is not there as an Indian filmmaker. Yeah. He's there as a filmmaker. And he's not, just because you're brown, he's not going to give you a first interview. You know, you have to still go through many routes to get to him.
Yeah. So I think the first film review of that particular film came only on Film Companion. Both you and Rangan sir had reviewed it.
Which one? Photograph. Yeah.
So how was the film?
I quite liked it. I actually expected a little more, but you can't blame us for having high expectations, because I've loved all his films, all his 3 films before this. I've like Lunchbox obviously was a Bombay film, so this for me was coming like a full circle, because this is another Bombay film and this is the other film after Lunchbox which isn't adapted. So for me this was good, because he went to UK, he went to small town America and came back to Bombay, and I went in maybe expecting a bit too much, but you know, the film stayed with me. I had to obviously write the review as soon as possible. And I like at that point you try to make as much sense as possible, or you try to predict how you'll feel about the film, say 2 weeks from now, or will this film stay with you? You basically try to read yourself. But that film, there's something about the film that's probably stayed with me. Of course, we were the first to do it because it was a world premiere in Sundance, and which was, and we luckily there's a press screening section, so you know we could also watch it before the public screening most of the time. It's going to release, I think, next month in India.
The trailer is out.
Yeah, the trailer is out. I believe there might just be mixed reactions to it. Again, his reputation might work against him.
I haven't watched the trailer. I've decided not to watch the trailer.
Yeah, don't watch it. I had no idea about what I was heading into. Exactly. I just knew Nawaz and Sania were there in it. I had no clue about the plot, about anything. So I was like, okay, I see parallels to Lunchbox, you know, nice setup, this, that. But very reserved film, very, internal film, something you come to expect from Ritesh Batra. Yeah. And it's interesting how he makes, how he sort of catches on to the culture of Bombay, or to the use of Bombay very differently from a lot of other filmmakers do.
I know, right? Like most of the Bombay, like I love this city. I've been to this city like almost all my life. I've been resident here for last 10 years. I don't see Bombay in movies much.
And even if you see them, you don't see them as a character most of the time, right?
That's what I mean. Like
you don't see it. But in this film, you will see that. And it occurred to me maybe a week later, saying, the reason it stayed with me is because he has a certain eye for the city. He has a certain eye not for the way the city looks, but for the way the people move across the city, smaller things in the city, the way the people navigate the city, the way they think or talk in this city, or or feel in a particular space in the city. And that is very rare. You saw that with Lunchbox, and you'll see it again here. It may not be as compelling on a plot level, but I think that isn't the point of this film. It's called Photograph after all.
Yeah. You had this phrase for this film, anti-physicality of the film. Anti-physicality. What do you mean by that?
Again, I mean, I'd sort of extend my Bombay point here, because most filmmakers treat Bombay as sort of a physical location in all their films. it's shoved down your face most of the time, either through the language or the people or the stories themselves.
Or Marine Drive.
Or VT station, you know, that shot. But I mean, Ritesh is this term I could use for all his films. You know, even Sense of an Ending, which he made in London, which is technically an alien location to him compared to, say, Bombay. The way he looked at that city wasn't surprisingly, it wasn't as an outsider, because he was looking at it through the characters in that book that he adapted. And I think in this film, with Photograph, I think what he's done is he's actually written a book in his head and then adapted it from his head. At least there was something in his head. And I really think that that's where that term anti-physicality comes from, because, you know, he's shown a particular side of Bombay that doesn't even make you realize you're seeing this particular city till maybe a couple of weeks after. And then you're like, there was no other place this film could have been made in. There literally can't be a city with so many stories just in different phases of development.
And what about Gurinder Chadda's film?
That was a out and out crowd pleaser. I mean, I was very fascinated by the reactions there. It was actually one of the best received films in the festival. A lot of foreign critics loved that film. They gave it a standing ovation, which automatically said that when I went in, I was like, okay, then the cultural gap is going to be shown here. But I quite enjoyed it though. Like Bruce Springsteen, you can't go wrong with a music fanboy film. This came from a personal space, unlike her previous films since Bend It Like Beckham. You know,
I love Bend It Like Beckham.
I loved, but after that she's not made a good film because she's you know, tried to adapt stuff. She's gone into the industry machine most of the time. You don't see her voice. She started taking herself way too seriously as a storyteller, who is an Indian storyteller based in England.
As if like she has some sort of responsibility.
Yeah, and you know, this is my vibe. This is what I'm going to keep making. I'm going to like adapt classics like this, and none of them worked. But this came from a personal space. You could see a little bit of her childhood maybe, or her parents' childhood or something like that. But I think it was actually texture-wise, it was far more convincing than all other films. And I'm counting Bend It Like Beckham in this, because Small Town England is a particular look, a particular sound, and there was nothing better than this industrial inspiring voice of Bruce Springsteen, that too after he had made it big, say in America. You know, that it came down to a small town in England and a boy and an introvert being inspired by it. It's mostly all of our stories, because mostly if we live in big cities, we turn to a particular musician or a film to inspire us, or a filmmaker. So this worked on a very universal level. You know, it was about a Pakistani boy, but it could have been any South Asian boy. Yeah, so I think, you know, she's sort of reconnected with what she was supposed to do. Better late than never. But yeah, I mean, I'd remember that film for sure.
Paddleton
just dropped on Netflix.
Like, how was that?
It was one of my favorite films of the festival. I watched it, I think, very early on, first day, I think. I was in tears. By the end of it, it could have been the jet lag. It could have been like, you know, I'm in a warm hall and it's just nice. It's just everything's fading away. But there's something about, you know, comedians doing dramatic movies. Because comedians in your head, you keep thinking that comedians turn to comedy because they are sad people inherently. You know, they turn to comedy as a defense mechanism, as an escape. And so when you see them do serious roles, not even in a not so serious way also, you feel like they're being vulnerable or personal on a very different level. Like Ray Romano doing a film like this, you'd never expect. And it's about like, you know, middle-aged friendship. It's about like weird male bonding, two unmarried guys just living next to each other, but obsessed with each other, you know, on a company level. You know, there are no homoerotic tones, nothing like that. It is just a very simple story about two people just whiling away their time together, and one of them is obviously gets cancer. So, you know, it's impossible to escape. They do it. The film is made with such they'll just suck you in with their random conversations, and then suddenly you realize that, you know, one of them is going to die. And it's a very basic thing. You know, you can't escape it, and they do it in such almost in real time sometimes. And when a film confronts you that way, and when a film shows you these very fragile losers who late in life who are trying to come to terms with the fact that they aren't but that they are very lonely, it's just like a funny tragedy in a way. And I love that film, and I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to. And I was happy to know that it was going to come out on Netflix, because I didn't know at that point when it would come out. And I think it's typical of Sundance to have that film. It's a very Sundance film. You will not, it's like, they are known names, that both the actors, sure, but it's just, you're not going to see it anywhere else. It's a small American film. This is exactly you call it a Sundance film. Also.
There was this line in your review about the film also. It's a beautifully unwritten tale.
Because, there's nothing scripted. It doesn't feel scripted. There's no... at most points, it doesn't feel like, if you're showing two friends or two companions through a film, always at some point they will act for the camera or say lines for the camera so that you remember those lines. There's not one memorable line in this film.
Really?
They are just randomly talking about sheep on the road and pizza, eating pizza, and how they are obsessed with kung fu movies from the 80s, and they go to a pub and keep making fun of people in the head. It's just random. It's what we would do when we are comfortable with someone for a long time. We don't have poignant conversations every time.
Absolutely.
We don't. And we keep talking about random shit. If someone else had to listen to, us talking to our best friend of 40 years, they'd be like, there's no depth to this conversation. And this is exactly what they managed to capture in this film. There's no depth. And which is why there is so much depth when something dramatic happens. And that's a rare thing, right?
That just reminds me of another Sundance independent film. It's one of my favorite films. How can I forget the name of one of my favorite films?
Which one? Actors, maybe?
The End of the Tour.
End of the Tour, right? Yeah.
That film is one after the other poignant conversation, but poignant conversation among strangers.
Among strangers. Also because writers. Right. Yeah. And like reporter, writer, they have to, the conversations feel poignant because they are speaking in words most of the time. But again, if you think about it, it was just two people hanging out throughout the film and connecting on a very subliminal level.
Absolutely.
And that's actually one of my favorite films.
Okay. And what about the documentaries? Sundance is pretty famous.
Is very famous, and rightly so, for their documentaries. I actually missed some of them, but I managed to catch the very good ones. I saw like a documentary made by a Chinese American filmmaker called One Child Nation. It's a documentary you will never see an Indian filmmaker make, because it is actually dissecting the nation. They have had the one child policy for more than 30 years to control the population and to raise the economic standards of the country. But this filmmaker actually, who is now married in America, comes back as a mother. Because she is a mother, she finds the strength in herself to visit her roots and find out the real reason behind why that policy was implemented. Propaganda, deceit, financial corporations being involved. It was like a thriller most of the time, because she keeps finding out stuff and we keep finding out stuff. Imagine someone trying to do that in India. They won't survive it. Like, there's a reason Anand Patwardhan documentary didn't play here.
No.
Right. It won abroad. It won in the biggest documentary film festival in the world. But our film festivals ignored it. And I
came across Anand Patwardhan films only in my college.
Same.
Because outside college, they are absolutely inaccessible.
I mean, he is probably the most, the bravest and the most necessary voice of our times.
Yes.
And no film festival support him. And I'm talking about Mami, or I'm talking about all of them. And you can only imagine the machinery that goes on from the top, from government side down. And that's why this One Child Nation is actually a blueprint in how to make political documentaries and make a resounding statement even on the craft aspect, even in the craft aspect. Because by the end you're moved by how even the people in China have been so emotionally affected by those 30 years and they've been so suppressed for those 30 years by the governments in power that when they're finally talking on camera, you feel like the damage is irreversible. An entire and this, we are talking the most populated country in the world. So, and that's some brave filmmaking. That is why people make documentaries, and this is a film that, everyone should watch, because not every country will allow this film, allow a film like that to be made in their country.
True.
And, and that was one documentary, and another one was Midnight Family, which was which was based in Mexico City. And it gave us a very interesting glimpse into the culture of a country we really don't know about, except we keep saying that our spices are same, which is very ignorant. Mexican food is very different. But it's about the emergency ambulance system there, the entire health infrastructure in that country is such that there are only maybe 12 or 13 commissioned ambulances that can reach a spot when someone is injured or someone is shot or someone dies.
Wow.
So the system actually revolves around families. It's a family business there. So families actually hire, they buy ambulances, and they are basically freelance health experts there. So, if you're injured on the road and an ambulance comes, it's most likely there's a husband driving the car, there's a wife who's the nurse, and there's the son who's like a paramedic there.
Oh my God.
And it was so stunning to see that. And the access that the filmmakers got, like staying in that ambulance, they follow one particular family, and you're seeing this ambulance go from place to place in Mexico City every night, and they also cash trap themselves. And the system is such that when they do pick up someone to rescue them, the first question the victim asks is, how much will this cost? How do I pay you? When they are dying.
Wow.
And these people are morally conflicted, and they don't know what to tell that person, and it's their conscience just tells them just rescue them, and that's why they are broke. So this is such a flawed system in that country, and and it was so hard hitting that, I mean, I can't imagine a system like that in any other. I mean, it probably happens everywhere, but that was such an education for me. Like, it was so well made, so there was so much access, and you saw so much that you wouldn't see in other documentaries. They did not shy away from showing like injured people and people cheating the family, the ambulance, like they are rescuing a mother and a daughter. When they reach the hospital, they were like, why should we pay you? What do they do also? So I think that documentary was another standout for me.
I saw the trailer of Disappearance of
My Mother. Very interesting documentary. Like, it was a very personal documentary about like an Italian filmmaker and his mother, who was a famous supermodel at one point, famous feminist at one point. It's no different from access journalism. It's basically, my mother is famous, but I'm going to get into the psyche and show the world how pressure and responsibility and fame on a particular woman can take a toll on her mental health. I thought it was very abstract in parts. I thought it was very strange, but I also felt there was a lot of heart to it. There was a genuine fondness between the son was actually using the documentary to connect with his mother, which is actually what the point of a lot of art should be.
True.
Right. And it didn't hit me in like, I mean, it's a little strange to digest, but I got the purpose behind that documentary, and I mean, it would not play again at any other festival. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah. It's such a sad thing. Like, documentary, in my opinion, is one of the most purest form of communication through cinema. And in India, we have absolutely zero culture of documentary consumption.
Yeah, I mean...
And it's not even like there is zero effort from within the industry also to say, you know what, let's make documentary also a part of our mainstream conversation.
People are too scared to touch things here, right? To show the reality of things. It stems from the base. The fundamental culture is that right now. The fundamental mood, the mood in the nation is that. Documentaries need to tell truths. People don't want to tell truths here. if you want to make a good documentary here, you have to actually get into something without being restricted most of the time. You have to get the okay from a law. You know how the culture works, the bureaucracy works here. It's such a difficult task, and you have to tell a truth through a documentary. But if you're not allowed to tell the truth, how will filmmakers do it? Like, people who do it also aren't like supported here. You know, I mean, the biggest documentary filmmaker of our generation has to show his films elsewhere. What is the point?
What is the point? Absolutely. What about that one short? Only one short film you saw, right? Throat singing.
Only one short, because I found it very. I just wanted to see an indigenous film about. Because this was also part of the whole inclusion thing, and they selected 8 indigenous films from across the world, and I managed to see this one short. I thought it just go well because it's like almost in the North Pole, and I am in like minus 10 degrees at that point, and I was like, maybe I'll connect to it. It was nice. It was just a nice, sweet little 3-minute capsule of a particular culture, which we will never visit in our lives. And you know, we do watch films at festivals most of the time to travel, right? To travel to different places. True. To get a peek into a different world. This was the same for me, like 2 girls just using the drone cameras to sort of show the environment, and showing us how they communicate through their throats, and how throat singing is a part of their culture there, which I found very interesting, because that's your background score there and then. So.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point that you said, like a new culture, a completely alien culture that we will never see. And that's the whole point of movie making.
It should be
like that. Transport the viewer to an experience that he or she will never have.
Correct.
Ever.
Most basic thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Most basic. Look at how many movies are made in Hindi cinema, mainstream or independent, that is based in Meghalaya or Arunachal Pradesh.
Yeah, for that matter, very few. And that's why the few regional films that do make it to festivals, when we do watch them and all, the reason they mostly do stand out is because they represent their culture in a certain way. Like, and because we are not going to be there, we are learning about a particular world while being entertained or engaged by a particular world, which is a rare balance to achieve. And not a lot of filmmakers can do that. So, I mean, we keep, obviously, in a country like India, there's great opportunity to, every state is a new world.
Absolutely.
And there's great opportunity, but, we don't see as many as we should.
How about Shia LaBeouf movie?
Oh, my absolute kryptonite at the festival. Shia LaBeouf. He comes with so much baggage. There was so much wariness in the festival, you could sense it. You were Shia LaBeouf playing his own father in his film, in his own biopic, directed by someone else. How will that play out? And actually, that's the film that has surprised me the most, say, in the last 5 or 10 years, because I went in really, and I actually like the guy a lot. I think when he played John McEnroe in Bog vs. McEnroe, I thought that was the most organic casting ever.
Okay.
Because that was him channeling so much of his own angst, and the most misunderstood player till he hit it big. The only difference is Shia LaBeouf, everyone feels, has lost his way because of the whole child artist syndrome, and because he started very early. This is exactly the kind of film that he needed to make to convince us that he's still the genius that a lot of people don't understand he is. He still has clocked so many years as an artist. And this was just exorcism for him on every level, and he welcomed us into that. It wasn't a self-obsessed film. I feel like personal essays are often looked down upon by a lot of journalists, editors, in writing, in general most of the time, because we approach personal essays which with this attitude saying, यार बहुत indulgent होगा, पता हमको क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है इसका, मतलब family के साथ क्या हुआ, this that. There is a culture across the world like that, even in filmmaking. So when a guy is writing his own biopic and starring as his father in that, you really go in with one eye, like really all over the place. And then when I watched that film, I felt redeemed, and everyone in that hall probably felt redeemed in a way, because everyone wants to tell their story. no matter how bad or good it is. And this guy has done it at a level. Of course, the direction was phenomenal. The performances were out of the world. You have the kid playing Shia LaBeouf in his childhood, and you have him playing his father, and that the device is part of the film. Like him playing his father, you can actually imagine what he's going through every scene. Playing the most disturbing person in his life and trying to find peace in making a film about himself. I don't think it was self-indulgent. I think it was necessary. I think it was a turning point. It's going to be a turning point in his career. I hope it does get the love it deserves, because it's a very brave, very out there film that you will not see any other person except Shia LaBeouf even dare to do. Because and I'll totally, I feel like a lot of critics there might have reacted to that first. That's why they may not have listed it as their favorite films. But at the moment when you were watching a film, there was no other film that moved you as much as that one. Right. It was a punch to the gut, and it was like, I tend to write a lot of personal essays myself, and when I saw that film, I felt like a little bit I felt vindicated in my own way. Even though I've gone through nothing he has, but I was like, this guy, he's told it in a language that has resurrected that whole art of personal storytelling, which is very difficult to do.
Aren't personal storytelling, I'm speaking completely from an ignorant point of view right now, aren't these sort of films rely on audiences' knowledge of the person's life, a deep knowledge already? So when somebody like me, like for example, I don't follow Shia LaBeouf, except for all I know is his memes and Transformer movies. I have no personal investment in his life, his career at all.
They do. They probably do, because actually most biopics do, for that matter. And
no, but biopics are still, in a way, even I had no idea about Jake LaMotta. I had no idea about Howard Hughes, but I was completely engaged to the point that they are now my favorite films ever.
Because after the Shia LaBeouf film, you'll feel like going to, you'll feel like reading everything there is to read about him over the last 20 years since he's been acting. Even though I haven't been following him day to day, I just know that he's been painted as this troubled star who could have been, and this very talented person who's sort of gone awry there, and who's very eccentric. And that's all you need to really know about him, because I had no idea about his father. I had no idea about that he was a child star also for the longest time, And when I saw that film, and the way they use LA in that film is like how probably Batra uses Bombay as a language. And it was so organic and so moving on every level that I don't think I'm going to be watching, at least there will be better films in this year or maybe in this decade. I'm not going to personally be moved as much as I was during that film. That film meant something to me, maybe a little more than say the next person.
Definitely.
And that's what films do sometimes.
That's
and that's Shia LaBeouf, and it's also because I always liked the guy. I was looking for something he could do that, or he would say, but he used the best medium possible, which is the only medium he's ever known.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of LA, one of the best LA films that have to come out in the last 5 years, I think, was Nightcrawler.
Oh
Dan
my
Gilroy.
God,
Nightcrawler. And his next film, Velvet Buzzsaw, is on Netflix. Yeah, Velvet Buzzsaw. How was that? It got panned by critics a lot.
It's a bizarre film. Like it's going to divide everyone. Obviously, it's like Nightcrawler was just. Nightcrawler was such a haunting film. It was a horror film on its own.
Yes, absolutely.
And Velvet Buzzsaw, the only difference is that this is actually a horror film. And it's a very, I enjoyed it, because I was like, there's someone being sardonic about the art world. We saw Square do it, a couple of years ago. But, they were sardonic in a very European way, if you think about it. They were still very, lot of subtext, very subtle.
Yes.
You have to really watch the film, appreciate the film. This one was just on your nose about so many things. They're using like a serial killing sort of artwork that basically kills everyone corrupt in the art world, which is great because this happens in all the professions, and it's you could imagine the filmmakers laughing while making it, and that's enjoyment on its own, right? And it's just a pleasure always to see Jake Gyllenhaal just do something so left of field all the time. he's playing a critic here, which is why I enjoyed the role even more. he's like an art critic who is just so he plays a cliche in such a distinct way that it's just impossible not to enjoy the film. Sure, I mean it's a bit obvious and it's a bit like bizarre and a bit like, say, I'd call it very indulgent, but I mean, I get the point. I get that, you know, how they combined horror and comedy to sort of present this very distinct side of LA that we really don't see enough, because we really don't associate America with art on first thought, you know, and that's how the film opens, that, you know, with a bunch of they give us the infrastructure of the whole industry, how it works. So I think that was an enjoyable film. It was a good stress buster compared to a lot of other serious films I was watching there. So I mean,
anything that they will say like that's complete shit, forget it, don't watch it.
I don't think there was a shit film that I watched. There were a couple of films in which I slept, but you know, you can't blame me for that. I actually, no, there weren't films I could pan totally. Like, I wouldn't pan them like out and out, because all of the films were chosen for a reason, and you immediately got the reason while watching that film. And
some of the Cannes Film Festival film I've hated to my bones.
I mean, I'm sure there are missteps in programming all the time. I didn't watch a lot of popular films in Sundance, the ones that actually went on to win the main awards and all. But amongst the films I watched, there were a lot of lukewarm films that you expect more from. But you know, there was this horror film that starred. It was made by the guy who made Under the Shadow. Baba Kanwari. Yeah.
I loved Under the Shadow.
Yeah.
My favorite horror film.
Most people did. And this film was probably, I think, Wounds. Most anticipated horror film of Sundance. And people were like, what the fuck just happened after that film? And nothing like Under the Shadow. And it's just so bizarre, so indulgent, so, and the guy was there for the Q&A. I was like, I'm going to sit through. I want to see him justify this. And I'm going to sit through. And he's such a weird guy. He's so socially awkward. Like, what do you expect filmmakers to be, you know? And then this guy comes on stage and the journalists are asking him questions about what the hell was that ending. You know, I'd say that it was really good casting. I mean, to see, what's a Call Me By Your Name guy?
Armie
Hammer do star in a horror film as like a troubled part of a psychological horror film is a very interesting choice. That too in New Orleans, which is a very unexplored environment in the horror genre in America. But you know, just to see him be a bartender finding a cell phone and you know someone else's like a customer's cell phone, and ever since he finds that cell phone, shit starts to go down in his life. Like his relationship goes weird, he sees visions, his people start reacting in weird ways, and the end is it's just the most bizarre. I can't even get, like, if people ever watch that film, I cannot blame them for wanting to like hunt down the director for, you know, taking away 2 hours. I didn't know how to react to it for the longest time. You're seeing journalists ask him saying, what were you thinking in that end? He was like, you know, it was adapted, so it wasn't entirely, it was from a short story.
Okay.
So it wasn't entirely my ending. And they were like, you know, we don't know what happened. He was like, that's the point. I was like, why is that the point? People come in for answers sometimes. Every answer, every question he'd sort of deflect with, yeah, that's how you read it. It's good. I was like, no, don't do that. It's a midnight screening. It's 1 a.m. This is the last thing I want to hear after like not sleeping for 24 hours. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's a memorable part of the festival for me, because you know you need to see these WTF films all the time.
All the time. I saw a couple of this Mami Film Festival.
And it has to happen, especially in the nights. You feel it all the more.
And I'm waiting for this film actually.
I'd be very interested to know how people around the world react to this film, especially after Under the Shadow.
Yes,
because this has no deep political statements to make. This is just him messing around with the craft, saying I'm going to screw your mind so much that it's just nice.
Another horror film that I'm waiting, I read 3 or 4 reviews of that film and it's been getting quite a big buzz, is Hole in the Ground.
Yeah.
How is it?
So Hole in the Ground was my last film of the festival, and I watched it mainly because it had gotten great reviews by then.
Okay.
It had become the most popular horror film of the festival by the time I watched it. So I was like, ye karna padega, and I went out of my way to watch it. And so it's an Irish film. It's based entirely in Ireland about a mother and son, like a creepy kid, basically. Yeah. It's that same creepy, atmospheric as hell, I found it very, again, it was very involving in how it put across its environment, and, it did not rely on jump scares. It did not rely on a lot of shit. It was a lot of, it was just a mother and son sort of trying to navigate a particular time in their life. A lot of supernatural stuff happening. You'll know in the last 20 minutes. I'll also have to admit I slept for 15 minutes in that film. It was the last film. I sort of slept through a very important scene which I had to ask a friend was watching it with me, and I had to and then I had to get a sense of, I was like, oh shit, that's why the ending was like that, right? But I'd say, I mean, the entire environment stayed with me for many reasons. Like, if I'd sort of recommend for people to watch that on a bigger screen if possible, or at least with great sound, with a great sound system, because that the horror, it isn't entirely a horror film. That is the biggest, I think, deceit of that film. So I'm like, the premise is entirely like, a kid goes into like this sinkhole in their property and comes out, and the mother doesn't know if it's her son or not after that, which is a very weird, creepy thing to and I will bet my life that not many people will understand what has happened. But the charm of these films is that that's not the point.
Exactly.
That is really not the point. And the thing is, you need to come away with a unsettling, uneasy sense of what just happened, and that it can happen in your environment or when you travel or when you're alone, which is, I think, the victory of this film. Also, a lot of films like this gather hype at festivals for various reasons, and I'm going to sort of guess that this film was mainly because you do not see a lot of films come out of we always admire the Irish countryside for many reasons. You will never look at it the same after this
film.
So I think that is a major selling point of this film also.
And that's the beauty of horror film, actually, like especially what Europeans are doing, especially in this last 15-20 years in horror genre, is quite commendable. They have let go of making sure that people understand the plot or even explain the plot. Nothing of that sort. Just get them engaged in the atmosphere, scare the shit out of them, and then let's just see how things happen. Under the Shadow was a guy that had no backstory, nothing explaining, no origin of ghost, no explaining what the ghost wants or anything. It's just like,
exactly, and it's just there, and it's just there at the moment. You can make what the hell you want out of it. And I feel like a lot of horror filmmakers are also misusing that.
Yes.
Of course. True. Because, they'll go all over the place and saying, who cares what you understood? But I think there's been a revolution, as you said. And it's good because I've gotten re-interested in horror film in the last 5 or 10 years. And I used to be a big fan.
Same here. It's my favorite genre even now.
Now I'm very much enjoying it. I'm not going to get into the horror films made here. But even Americans are doing it well now. So it's a nice...
Americans have always been learning from Europeans.
Yeah, they have, I'm sure. They have. But I think it's been an interesting time in general for horror films, which is why you see a lot of the most popular films of every festival always a horror film.
Yeah,
always.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for that. Hope it gets... If not a release, at least it comes.
I think it'll come on. It could just come either Mami or a streaming platform.
I never know. A streaming platform that I won't even like.
Otherwise, hire a projector. It's fine. And
it's not just projector, it's the sound system.
It's a sound system.
Roma, I loved Roma only for its sound.
Only its sound. And if I hadn't watched it the first time in the hall,
absolutely,
I may not have really been affected by it.
I saw it on Netflix and I wasn't engaged at all.
I didn't bother to watch it on Netflix because I was like, no, this is not why the film was made. It's great that it's getting like visibility, but I am just glad I watched it at Mami, and it really thankful that the sound really worked.
It worked so beautifully.
Yeah, it worked so beautifully.
Like if somebody wants to know what Atmos really sounds like, watch Roma in Atmos Theatre.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Like the whole 360 sound effect that everybody
Yeah, there were times when I just... I was like, who the hell is making a noise during this film? And I'm realizing, oh shit, it's just
coming
it's
from
part
the movie.
Of the movie. I like, this is... feel like a child all over again.
Absolutely. The first time I still remember I was watching Border. That was my first surround sound movie.
Wow.
And the gunshots coming from the back of the seat. Oh shit. That was like
must have been
a whole
something.
new experience.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What else did you like, did not like? If you can just name one or two more.
I mean, Sundance, I think couple of other films I liked. There was this film called Big Time Adolescence. Very indie, very American film. Stars that comedian Pete Davidson, who I didn't... is the SNL guy, basically.
Yeah.
Who I didn't know much of before I watched the film. It's a very... On the face of it, it's a very typical high school film where you're seeing like a young kid and sort of idolize a drifter who's Pete Davidson, who's an older guy. And the young kid idolizes him to an extent where he doesn't know that this guy is actually a loser, in the sense that he is a complete like drug junkie. He is a womanizer. He's the most unreliable person. He lives on like his family's whatever little money they have. And it's very interesting because they are looking at... It's a male gaze of male bonding through a very like... We don't see it often. You always see one redeeming character in the film. Here, both of them are sort of doing the wrong thing through the film. The boy's parents are worried too that, he's idolizing this guy because this guy used to date his sister at one point. And I thought it was very well acted, very, it unassuming in that way. It sort of grows on you because it's just these guys interacting with each other. Very likable character. Even the older guy who Pete Davidson, I think it's one of the best performances I saw at Sundance. Just play, like a terrible sort of influence, but in such a heartwarming, nice way that you feel sorry for the guy and you feel like this is only going to last till this kid grows up. Yeah. It's like one of those relationships which are meant to be doomed.
Yeah, we all had them.
We've all had them, of course, but it's mostly been like romantic.
Yeah.
And it's been like platonic. But here we are talking about a friendship.
Exactly, like in the friendship, like we remember our college days.
Yeah,
when we
and there's always this one guy till we realize that, oh shit, this guy is trouble.
Yeah.
So here this kid is just spent years, like 5-6 years. And I think it's a very relevant thing to talk about. People don't talk about male friendships enough these days without being judgmental,
Absolutely.
And I think because, and it's great that, you're perceptive about these things because it's not easy to be honest about how flawed we are in general as a race. And when we do see people like that on screen, we are like, they can be good-hearted, nice guys, but in the end, it all comes down to, the sort of the chemistry or the relationship between these two people. And I think they handle that film very well because, most high school coming-of-age films tend to be very quirky, very indie, very, obviously hipster in that sense. You're just sold on the way these two guys just go about their mostly doomed equation, which was very interesting to see.
Now that you mentioned like the movies that show friendship between two male, I think Hindi cinema of the 70s has explored that particular relationship more than any other.
I think unintentionally also. That's pretty much like in all forms, like brothers and friendships and all kinds and that I don't think that was intentional at all. But now most of these films are marketed as male bonding or female bonding films.
Yeah.
You go in with a perception of what to expect. You look at it through that prism then.
Yeah, absolutely. In those movies when it was just a part of the film and a subplot, they have become the plot.
And then it'll stay with you.
Yeah.
You don't go in expecting that, and the beauty of a film is when it can reveal something that it was about after you watched it. And very few films do that. I thought Big Time Adolescence was a very good example.
Yeah. Okay, so one last thing I would like to discuss with you. We are recording this on, what is the date today? 23rd of February. So Oscars are tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Oscars are tomorrow.
And how can we not talk about Oscars?
Yeah, of course.
What do you think? What I see, for me, I personally think this is the shabbiest Oscar nominations ever.
I cannot disagree. I honestly sort of lost interest after the nominations came out.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm not really as excited as I was.
I'm not even watching. I'm not even bothering.
I mean, I'll have to watch it, but yeah, it could have been something else. Could have been something else.
What do you think now that we know, we both agree on one fact, is the shabbiest nominations at least?
It is. I was just very disheartened by the fact that they ignored a lot of good films.
Clear good films.
Yeah.
Like it's not even like nobody was talking about
and
those
in
films.
the name of, see, that's where a particular time, a particular culture, which is probably good for everything else surrounding films, when it comes and starts affecting the way Hollywood or the way cinema thinks, I don't think that's where representation and equality and all this is a very, I mean, it's a debate. It's a legit debate, and I think it is really affecting the way award ceremonies go about, selecting their films.
Yes.
Representation ke naam pe kuch aur ho raha hai, and I don't.
They're targeting the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I don't subscribe. Like I don't see why Black Panther should be part of the
Absolutely.
nominations. I don't. I enjoyed the film, and I like it as a superhero film, but it has no business being in the 10 best films of the world, 9 best films of the year. No way.
I think.
And how dare you ignore First Man?
How dare you?
Just because it's about a white man.
Absolutely. And that too got little right-wing agenda attached to it.
Yeah, whatever it got
nonsense.
Controversy, something someone saw, and I mean, it's arguably his best film, and I just don't see why, like as Nolan put it so beautifully, that it's an introverted film about the most extroverted moment in history.
Absolutely.
And
right?
that is something.
That's something.
And you just ignore it.
Yeah. I saw that film all four times on IMAX.
Yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
it's
That's just, yeah.
one of the best cinematic
Experiences I've ever had. Same. Like when I saw it, it took me days to recover. Days.
Absolutely.
I just and I found it, I'm always nervous when I see a good film and I have to write a review, because then you really have to mine your sensibilities. You have one chance to get it right, and you take nights and nights to get it right, and you're going to suffer. But with First Man, it just flowed, and it just...
And it is, I must say, it's one of the most beautiful review I've ever read of yours, and it deserved that.
Yeah, and how often does that happen? That, it's such a privileged moment for everyone involved. You just want to talk about a film in the way it was made.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't get to do that much.
Get to do that.
So, I mean, that's one of my major upsets of this year, which is why I'm really not very keen about, who wins and who doesn't win. Like, I wasn't even a fan of Star is Born, so,
Neither am I. I hated Bohemian Rhapsody also.
Right.
Although I had a good time while watching
Even
it.
I had a very good time while watching it, and I thought his performance was really good. But of course, I will not be surprised if he wins Best Actor.
Yeah, I would not. Absolutely. The best acting performance was not even nominated, in my opinion. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in You Were Never Really Here.
Oh, right. It qualified for this year, right?
Yeah. For Oscars, it's qualified for this year, although it's a previous year's film.
Exactly. I think that's a factor also. Must have been a factor.
I don't know. Lobster, they made sure that at least Lobster get this screenplay nomination. This film is by far, clearly, I say it on record, best acting performance, best direction for Lynn Ramsey.
Yeah.
She deserves an Oscar already. Come on.
Well, then it transcends the Oscars, I guess.
Absolutely. I don't know how. And that's my biggest, in a way, quib about Oscars. You talk about this representation, you talk about all of this, and there is one woman making the best film of the year,
best film,
and you've completely overlooked it.
I don't think the Oscars are the be all and end all.
Absolutely not.
Just because you've been nominated doesn't mean you made a great film. Nowadays, it's come to that.
Avatar was nominated.
Yeah, like I mean, I can name far worse films, but I mean, mostly it become a political thing at most points. It's become so much campaigning and so much.
Absolutely, and. I've said this a couple of times on Twitter also, and everybody said, why are you giving a fuck if this is not such? The reason I give a fuck is because I remember 2006 Oscars. I think Departed won the best film.
Yes.
The way they did nomination itself forget who won, who did not win. The way they nominated each category got me interested in filmmaking.
Okay.
The way they nominated best editing, so they had these 3 slots of different shots, and every time, and they had a big screen at the bottom where the actual movie was playing, and they had rushes playing in those 3 slots.
Okay, right.
So you could get to see what editing is.
Yeah.
Okay, they're picking up from these different options and then making one movie.
And they almost removed that category.
They removed that category.
Yeah. I mean, imagine cinematography.
They were showing how they were lighting while nomination
I remember they've done that a couple of times.
They've done a couple of times. Screenplay writing, I remember this.
They used to show
They were somebody action lines.
Yeah.
A woman was reciting those action lines till the time there was a dialogue, and when there was dialogue, an actor would speak the dialogue. That was so beautifully done.
Yeah.
That Oscar ceremony got me like, oh shit, this is really interesting.
That's something. I mean, now we're getting nostalgic about how great it is. And it's only reminding me of what might happen tomorrow and what we'll see. There's no host, there's nothing. Half the Oscars might just not be shown. I don't know. I mean, I'm not very happy about, the nominations, but it's just, I don't see. And it's not even a good representation of the year that went by.
Not at all.
The only heartening thing I actually saw was like 3 foreign directors being nominated for Best Director.
Yeah.
I mean, that's at least that is someone admitting somewhere that, American directors they don't make the best films.
They don't make the best films. That's very true now.
You see Cold War, Roma and Favorite, and you'll like, okay, maybe.
Absolutely.
Maybe.
I think I hope Favorite wins, if nothing
Favorite was very enjoyable. It was.
Yeah. I hope Roma, I'm pretty sure Roma will win.
Roma will sweep the awards. I mean, there's no doubting that. It's also 5th time Mexican best director in the last 6 years, which is something. Which is again a statement against the political administration.
True, but if he wins, it's more for his director. I'm pretty
this
sure
time he deserves it.
Yeah.
See, last time I wasn't sure it was deserved.
For
Shape of Water. I don't think it was deserved.
I think Phantom Thread was
I think even a couple of other films for that matter. I just thought that, even for that matter, I don't think he deserved it for both Birdman and for Revenant, So when he won.
Birdman I would give, Revenant I won't.
Yeah, exactly. So both years I was like, it's a bit much.
Yeah.
Birdman I can see why direction.
Yes.
But Revenant is
more
a Leo.
It's more of a Leo's film, and it felt
at many a time
a gimmick also. A lot of time it did.
Let him just win it. It's fine.
And that's another thing. Like Leo, the thing people say about Leo, he should win. Every time he lost to a far superior performance.
He did, and I think he'd be the first to admit. I can't blame him. He's always given his absolute best, and I love him, but he's always lost to a better actor, and that's how it's been. That's how it turns out. Even in Revenant there were better actors on the list, but you're like, take a lifetime. The pressure should be off. It's probably Glenn Close's situation this year, with the wife. I've not seen the film per se, but from the vibe I'm getting, it's like she's been nominated 6 times.
No, but her performance is truly.
I'm sure, brilliant. But I really loved Favorite for the performances too.
I just love the way Lanthimos has this very peculiar way of making movies.
Very peculiar way. I'd see, I've never warmed up to his movies except till Favorite.
Oh, really? I saw his first film. I remember it was a class assignment to watch Dogtooth.
That class assignment.
And I've just fell in love with the guy.
No, I get that. I get why he's a deal, and he should be also. Favorite was probably his most accessible film, and even my favorite film of his.
How much did we spend time?
We lost track of time.
I think we're 90 minutes in. I think we should wrap this up.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Rahul, for coming.
Oh, no, it was a pleasure.
Let's do this some other time, maybe after
sure.
Mami.
We can always keep talking.
Yeah.
There's a lot to discuss.
Yes. Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you. Thank you for listening, guys. Bye-bye. Hey guys, thank you very much for listening. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and check out the other videos as well. And if you want to support the channel, then you can head over to Patreon, where you can pledge $1 or $2 to keep the channel going. Trust me, anything and everything helps. Keep watching, and I'll see you next time.